Hi, welcome back. This is Basic Excel Part 4. I'm back in my remote office, and I've decided to go ahead and switch back to Excel 2013. Again, just to show you that everything I'm doing is cross-platform. If I had an older version, I'd pop up an older version and do what I'm doing in that version, just to show you that nothing I'm doing is version specific. So where we left off on part 3, we added our additional labels. Let me resize this column. That didn't carry over. I'm going to go ahead and make this heading a true heading. I'm going to select these 5 cells. I'm going to come up here to the alignment group. I'm going to click the merge and center button. What that does is it merges all of those cells together into one large cell. So if I move my active cell, you can see there's no borders, no grid lines in here. If I did apply a border, see, I'll apply a thick box border to this, you can see it goes all the way around that one giant cell. If you wanted to add a little bit of space to this, right, I'll be doing some things that review kind of what we've learned. If I wanted to add some space above this between the header and my first set of labels, I can right click and then select insert. That's handy. There's another way to insert. If you need to insert multiple rows or multiple columns, you can do that by selecting however many rows or columns you wanted to insert. So let's say I want to add 3 rows between my header and my first bit of information here, my first set of labels. I simply come over here to the row headers and I select 3 rows, and then anywhere in those 3 rows that are selected in the header, I right click and then select insert. And you can see that it inserts 3 blank rows. I don't need 3 rows, so I'll just get rid of 2 of them. And it's the same thing for columns. If I wanted to insert 2 columns to the right of column D, then I would select columns D and E, right click to get my menu, and then select insert, and it inserts 2 blank columns to the right of what I had selected. And you can see that it also expands my merged column up here all by itself. So that's how you can insert multiple rows and multiple columns. Just a little something extra. Let's go ahead and add an additional, let's add 2 rows in here. So I'll select the 2 rows, insert, and there's 2 rows. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to put totals in here, and then I also want to put totals in here. So again, I'm going to do my non-adjacent cell selecting. Select the first cell, take my magic finger, hold down the control key, click the second cell, and then I do my typing, total, and then what's the trick here? Yep, your magic finger, hold down the control key, press enter, and there it enters that label in all selected cells. I also want to do some auto summing, so I'm going to select these cells. I don't really need to sum the totals, but I can if I want to. And then I'm also going to do a total on these. So you select all of those. I'm going to do an Alt equals, remember that? And there we go. It adds my formulas in all 8 of those cells all at the same time. Huge time saver, huge time saver. All right, now we're going to look at some of the other mathematical operators, the multiplication, division, and subtraction. We'll start with subtraction. Let me do a little adjusting here. I zoomed out a little bit so we could see things better. So I just readjust these. So here in cell A17, I'm going to put, and I always get these backwards. I think this is called my net income, my income after expenses. If I have that backwards, I'm sorry. I apologize. I always get them backwards. I think the way I remember it is it should be the other way around, because after expenses, what I have left is really gross. So I think net income here is the correct terminology. And I'll click the enter button to accept that, and then I'll adjust column A because it's bleeding over a little bit. All right, so this is easy. We're going to come over here to some other cell, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, you could put this anywhere on your worksheet. I could put all this information over here and still do my calculations. It's no big deal. I just choose to do it below because I'm trying to keep everything here in this nice little area. So to get my net income, I simply subtract my total expenses from my total income. So again, we start with an equal sign because all Excel formulas start with an equal sign. Now there is no auto subtract. There is no keyboard shortcut that I know of, mainly because there's no function. The keyboard shortcut Alt equals invokes the sum function. I don't know of a subtract function. Of course, there are over 400 functions in Excel, and I don't know them all. So maybe it's out there and I just haven't found it. If you find it, let me know. So I'm going to do equals, and then I'm going to select my total expenses, and then minus, which is just the minus sign, and then I'm going to select my total expenses. So C7 minus C15. I'll click the enter button up on the formula bar, and there is my net income. Now I can use my fill handle, and I can copy that formula all the way across. Beautiful, beautiful. I probably don't really want, my net total. So I can grab the fill handle and I can back that off one column. There we go. We'll just look at the monthly tallies for what we're looking at here. So there's subtraction. We'll come down here to the next row 18 in column A. And for this one, we're going to calculate, I believe it's kind of like your debt to income. I want to figure out what percentage of my money is being paid out. Okay, so I'll just put percent paid out. Capitalize that. All right, percent paid out. I want to find out what percentage of my income is being paid out. I know how much it is, right, because that's in the row above, but now I want to find out the percentage. So I put my label in there, and I'm going to tab over twice to column C. And this is going to be a simple division problem. And again, there's no keyboard shortcut for division. There's no auto divide. And to figure out your percentage out, you divide the total expenses divided by, division is the forward slash. Depending on what kind of keyboard you have, if you have a number pad over on the right side, all of your mathematical operators are there. You start above the enter key, you have the plus sign, and then working up and to the left, you have the minus sign, multiplication, and division. If you're on a laptop or something like that doesn't have the number pad, the forward slash is the one to the left of the right-hand shift key. Okay, makes a big difference. If you put a backslash in there, it's not going to do what it needs to do. So C15 divided by C7. And that's how I get my percentage paid out. And you'll see it shows up as a decimal. Easy enough to change that decimal into a percent. You simply come up here to the number group and look, there's a percent button. Click on the percent button and there it changes it. I'm paying 16% of my total income out in expenses for the month of September. And again, I can grab the fill handle down here, copy that across, and see the difference. So November was a little bit more strenuous on my net income. I ended up paying out 21% for that one. All right, so now that we have all of this good information, now what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what our best percentage of savings would be, right? This is going to be savings. And what percent you can afford to put into savings is based on, I guess, how much your net income is. So what we do for this one is we're going to put the percentage of savings here in cell B19. Let's say I want to start with 12%. Okay. And I'm going to click my enter button. Now I want to show you a little keyboard shortcut to show you the way some things work. And the way some things work, I'm talking about when you enter a number as a percentage, right? These we converted to a percentage, but this we entered as a percentage. So there's a keyboard shortcut that will convert all of your formulas. Instead of displaying the values of your formulas or the result of your formulas, it'll show the actual formulas. In other words, it's going to show actual cell content. So if I come up here and click on cell C18, you can see my actual cell content, even though it shows 16%, is my formula. This is 12%. So if you hold down the control key, take your magic finger and hold down the control key, and then press the tilde key. It's the key directly to the left of the number 1 on the top row. Okay, so here you can see there's all your formulas, and there is my percentage. So even though I entered this as 12%, it automatically converted it to 0.12. Okay, so why would you need to see this? Why would you care about all of this? Well, if you have a really good worksheet and you want to keep that for reference, I know a lot of people like hard copies, you can switch to this view, the control tilde, and then print this. Maybe you just want to print it as a PDF so that you can use it for reference. Or maybe you do want that hard copy. You can print it out on hard copy. It's up to you. But that's kind of what that's used for. So we can go ahead and switch it back by doing the same keystroke, control and then the tilde key. Converts it all back to normal. Now we're going to come over to cell C19, and this is where we're going to start doing our calculations. We want Excel to multiply this value times this value. That's how we figure out how much money we're going to put into savings. So again, we start with our equal sign, and then we select our first value, which is going to be our net income for that month. And then we're going to multiply, which is the asterisk, and we're going to multiply that times this cell, or the 12%. We click the enter button, and there we go, $465.60. We'll just round those. We'll get rid of the decimal points, right? You click the decreased decimal, and it'll round up or round down depending on what your decimal is. So now, based on everything we've learned, I can take this fill handle and copy this across. And you'll see that I get these hashtags or pound signs or number signs, depending on what generation you grew up in. So I can just resize these columns. I just select both of these and then double click to resize automatically. So here in September, I put $457 into savings. In October, I put $1,699,009 into savings. And in November, I put $5,625,417,475 into savings. Wouldn't it be great if we could take home $3,000 and put $5 billion of that into savings? So obviously there's a problem here. Our calculations must be off a bit on these two. And it is, and I'll tell you why. Here in cell C19, we entered our formula, right? And I'm going to press F2 just to bring that formula back up. We're multiplying cell C17 times cell B19. Now, keep in mind, these are, do you remember what kind of references these are? These are relative cell references. So Excel's not looking at cell C17 and cell B19. It's looking at the cell 2 spaces above me and multiply that times the one right beside me. So let's look what happens when we move this over one column. It now takes the cell 2 above me and multiplies it times the one right beside me. So there's an issue. And then we move it over one more time and we get the same thing. It multiplies the value of the cell 2 above me times the one right beside me. That's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to multiply this value times this value, right? Our net income times our savings percentage, not our net income times our savings from last month. So we're going to undo those two. And what we need to do with this formula, again, I'll press F2 to get back into edit mode, is we need to make this B19 reference an absolute reference. What that means is no matter where I copy or move this formula to, it will always go back to cell B19 for that part of the function. And the way you make this an absolute reference is with your insertion line in that reference, you press the F4 key. And you'll notice that it adds a $ in front of the column and a $ in front of the row. So you could do this manually as you're typing things out. You could do $B, $19, and it'll have the same effect. But that makes this reference an absolute cell reference. So what Excel's going to do is it's going to multiply the cell 2 above me times the value of cell B19. So if I copy this formula over now, you'll see I get my hashtags again. But when I adjust my column widths, I don't get those outrageous numbers. Because now, if I go into edit mode here, you'll see it's multiplying the value of the cell 2 above me times B19. B19 is an absolute cell reference. Same thing in this one. Multiply the value of the cell 2 above me times cell B19. It's always going to go back to B19 for that particular part of the formula. So there's that. That's the remainder of the mathematical functions. That's correct terminology, mathematical functions, as well as some more on cell references. Now we talked about 2 cell references, absolute and relative. There are actually 4, but I don't want to get into all of that right now. All the other 2 are is a combination of those 2, absolute relative and relative absolute. Nothing we need to worry about right now. All right, if you need to edit a formula like we did this one, there's a couple different ways you can edit the formula. Let's say I wanted to make, since I'm only, well, here we go into the other cell references again. If we only need to make our column reference absolute, because I'm not going to copy this formula up or down, only to the left and to the right. So then I only need really to make my column reference absolute. So if I wanted to change this, I could come up here to the formula bar and delete that second $sign. That's one way you can edit the formula. And if I copy this across, there should be no changes. See, no changes, because the column reference is the only one that changes when you copy across. When you copy up and down, the row reference will change. So one way to make a formula edit is up here in the formula bar. The other way to make a formula change is like I was showing you, or I mentioned as I was talking about this, you press the F2 function key in the active cell, and that'll take you back into edit mode. And what I mean by edit mode means that you're going to edit that cell content. If I'm not in edit mode, if I'm just out here clicking around, you'll notice down here in the bottom corner on our status bar, Excel displays ready. If I come to another cell and I start typing, it changes from ready to enter. That means when you're done doing what you're doing, click the enter button or press the enter key. And when I press the enter button or click the enter button, it switches back to ready. If I want to make a change to that cell, I press F2 to edit. And now look what the status bar says. The status bar now says edit, because it knows there was something in that cell already. And now I'm going in to make a change, right? You make your change, you press enter, you come back out, and now it switches back to ready. Those are essentially the three main statuses that you'll see for Excel down here in the status bar. There are a few others, but it's really not important to get into those. What is important is that if you need to click on a button up here on the ribbon or something, and you notice that they're all grayed out like that, go to a different tab and look, everything is grayed out. Go to another tab, everything is grayed out. Go to another tab, everything is grayed out. If you ever come across this situation, usually that means you're in either edit mode or enter mode in your active cell. So if I come down here and I look at my status bar, and you'll see it says enter. Well, if I'm in enter mode, then Excel thinks I'm trying to enter something into my active cell, but I'm not, I didn't type anything. But if I come up here and look in my active cell, I see my flashing insertion line. Normally when this happens is you'll accidentally press the space bar or something of that nature, which I did. So if I press the backspace key, you'll see my insertion line moves over. I can press the escape key to get out of enter mode, and now I have my ribbon fully available again. So that's just something that you need to kind of watch out for. All right, so I think we're going to call this section done. Again, we looked at a little bit of review on non-adjacent cell selection, entering the same text in multiple cells. We did the total here and the total here. We did alt equals to add our sum function into all 8 cells here for our totals. Then we did our subtraction, division, and multiplication functions down here, as well as a bit of review and explanation on absolute and relative cell references. So for this lesson, we'll say done. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.